Welcome back to Blasphemous Nutrition. I'm your favorite naughty nutritionist, Aimee, and today I interview an unlikely source who has examined the root cause of many of our cravings and how to solve them. Could this be the key to eliminating fear around knowing what to eat? Tune in and decide for yourself. Hey, Rebels, welcome to Blasphemous Nutrition. Consider this podcast your pantry full of clarity, perspective, and the nuance needed to counter the superficial health advice so freely given on the internet. I'm Aimee, the unapologetically candid host of Blasphemous Nutrition and a double-degreed nutritionist with 20 years experience. I'm here to share a more nuanced take on living and eating well to sustain and recover your health. If you found most health advice to be so generic as to be meaningless, or so extreme that it's unrealistic, and you don't mind the occasional F-bomb, you've come to the right place. From dissecting the latest nutrition trends to breaking down published research and sharing my own clinical experiences, I'm on a mission to foster clarity amidst all the confusion and empower you to have the health you need to live a life you love. Now let's get started. Marty Kendall, welcome to Blasphemous Nutrition.
Aimee, great to chat. Great name. Blasphemous. Let's do it.
Let's get blasphemous. So there's going to be some people listening who know who you are, but I'm going to assume that the majority aren't as familiar with you, certainly as I am. So why don't we start off with kind of like, tell me how you fell into the rabbit hole of
Yeah.
nutrient density, because this isn't you didn't come from the same
No,
stock that I did,
it's
right?
a
You don't have.
complete accident. I have no education or brainwashing or blinkers about nutrition. So yeah, I just married well. So married Monica 22 years ago, and she happens to have type 1 diabetes, and it was just a quest initially when we started to think about having kids and look at the risks of a diabetic pregnancy. Went, wow, that's pretty scary. We need to get serious about this. And yeah, I started trying to understand the relationship between insulin and carbohydrates and how to dose for that. And that was sort of the first step. And then maybe 10 years ago, I came across the food insulin index and went, hey, I can quantify this to understand the foods that will help Moni stabilize her blood sugar and need less insulin for her meals. And then it's like, oh, everything that requires less insulin in the short term is just pure fat. So I had some understanding of nutrient density, and some people, Rob Wolf had been talking about Matt Lalonde at the time, who had just spent a weekend diving into the USDA database and quantifying that and making a pretty cool nutrient density ranking. And I tried to replicate that and join it together with the food insulin index to make a multivariate analysis to combine those two parameters. I suppose, as you can see, I'm an engineer by training, and that's my background. So up until that point, I'd been designing roads and bridges, and I just have a quantitative mind that understands and believes data. That's where I started, and it just kept going, and I kept sharing, and people dug it and found it helpful. And I just went, this is really interesting. This is really important for my family. And a couple of years ago, my son, who just turned 18 yesterday, got type 1 himself. So that was the day I quit engineering. So the last day in the office, we're also in the hospital getting his
Wow.
first insulin dose. So it's like the world telling me, yeah, this is your thing. So it's just, yeah, been a whole lot of fun to find a quantitative agnostic approach to nutrition, because so much of the time, I love the name of the podcast, Blasphemous Nutrition, because nutrition is so much of the time religious. It's a religious belief system in different ways to different degrees, but there's so much superstition and fear in nutrition. And it's
Absolutely.
like, let's quantify this. Let's get to the root cause. What does our body need? What does it crave? And how can we do that more efficiently? How can we give our bodies exactly what it needs, the right nutrients, with just the right amount of energy, so it can thrive and get out of this hellhole of nutrition that's dominated by fear and profit. So yeah, I think the biggest problem is just profit. Everything's about profit, and we get educated to buy the things that are most profitable.
And driven by fear to do so.
Yeah, everything's trying to kill you, according to someone on the internet, whether it's saturated fat or carbs or plants or animal-based foods or oxalates or, spinach or meat or red meat or processed meats. It's like crazy. Everything's trying to kill you. So food becomes I can't eat this and so afraid of food. And then I'm addicted to food because I've been restricting food. And it's just
Right.
what a crazy hellhole we've created in nutrition that everything's fearful. And the best way for the plant-based peeps to tell you that you shouldn't eat animals is to make you afraid of cholesterol and saturated fat and, TMAO or whatever the latest thing is that you can drag up to say you should be afraid of. And then the carnivore crowd are saying it's oxalates and plants and, those little spinach bok choy things that trying to suffocate you during the night and, be afraid. Don't sleep near a bok choy plant. It's like, it's crazy. Whatever you share on Twitter just gets howled down by the other side. And yeah, what can we eat? What do our bodies need? Eating is part of life, and how do we live life to the fullest without living in fear?
Right, right. I'm I'm curious because I didn't realize I knew you were an engineer, but I didn't realize you were like structural engineering, like building bridges and things. And
Yeah,
so
that was my gig. So I was designing bridges, and I'm just an analysis nerd, and
was
I
there
see a
something
graph.
particular about your wife's guidance in her pregnancy that made you like jump into this whole other pond to explore what she needed?
My wife's sister is a really great doctor, and she recommended another doctor who had just been starting to dive down the rabbit hole of quantification of insulin dosing for carbs. And he just helped me understand it was a numbers game. This is all just
Right.
numbers. And I went, I'm an engineer. I get this. I can. So through the pregnancy, it was a continual thing of updating her insulin sensitivity as she grew bigger and needed more insulin. So every week I'd update the little insulin sensitivity chart. And that was 22 years ago. And I just realized it's all a numbers game. And the quality of her life from back then to now is radically different. But I keep imagining what her life could have been if, when she was diagnosed at 10, her mum had understood what we know now. And I think, well, if other people with type 1 kids could know what we know, or, the rest of the world, this is sort of spilled over from type 1 to type 2 to satiety to nutrient density. It applies to everybody. And I just went, this is a really worthy quest. And I can burn through my retirement savings and keep blogging. It's like I used to want to be a jazz musician, used to love playing saxophone. And the
Really?
joke that got me through engineering is what's the difference between a large pizza and a jazz musician? A large pizza can fit a family. And what did the jazz musician do when he won the $1 million lotto? We just kept gigging until he ran out of money, and that's pretty much what I'm doing with nutrition. We can stay home and eat well and hang out with the family, and I can keep on blogging and analyzing nerdy stuff because I love it. So it's just completely fascinating and really important. So I've got
Yeah.
these massive spreadsheets of all this data that can help me pinpoint what humans need in their food.
Tell me a little bit more about how your wife's quality of life has changed. I mean, particularly, there's a lot of attention with type 2 diabetes and
Yep.
carbohydrate intake, and we kind of leave type
Yep.
1 off the table. I think, since it's a completely different mechanism, I don't know, I'm just throwing it,
Yeah. I mean,
but
the
how has her life changed?
the mechanism is definitely different because with type 1, the pancreas fails due to an autoimmune condition.
Right.
With type 2, it's basically you exceed your personal fat threshold and all the energy backs up into your system and you see elevated glucose because you've you've reached energy toxicity, that you've got too much energy in your system, and you end up with glucose and free fatty acids and ketones in your blood, which don't look good, but it's really the root cause is you're over fat because you've been eating low satiety, nutrient poor foods. But yeah, I mean, the quality of life for Moni has radically changed in terms of energy levels, mood, depression. Her life, when she was diagnosed at 10, she was told, You might reach 40, you might reach 50 if you're
Right.
lucky. The last 10, 20 years of your life are going to be not good. So, yeah, I've never met anybody who's so comfortable with death that when she was 10, she was basically told she'd die early. And here we are at 47, thriving, and we're going on a cruise in a week. And, her life would be better if she'd never had type 1 diabetes. But looking at her now, you wouldn't know. So a lot of the mood, depression, I mean, to start with, when your blood sugars are on a massive roller coaster, your energy levels, your hunger, your mood are completely dysregulated because her blood sugars are more stable. Um, Her life isn't driven by I need to eat now because I just injected too much insulin. So that's definitely the first step for anybody on type 1 or type 2 is to stabilize the blood sugars into healthy levels. But I think where we get into trouble with, keto and low carb is that if low carb is good, zero carb must be better and fat is a free food. So that's the whole keto rabbit hole that we all went down 10 years ago, chasing more elevated ketones. And that was another belief that I had to
Unlike,
understand with data is to unlearn, to understand why that's not the case. And that's been fun.
yeah. Tell me more about that personal fat threshold. I think that's a term that not a lot of people are familiar with.
Mm. Yeah, so Professor Roy Taylor, genius guy, started looking at the body fat, the effect on body fat on diabetes, and we often think diabetes because it aligns with an elevated glucose is a condition of carb intolerance. So, you're obviously allergic to carbohydrates because you eat carbs and your blood sugars go up. But when you understand the fuel tanks in your body, the glucose in your blood is like 20 calories worth of energy, 5 grams of glucose. And then you've got your liver and muscle glycogen, then you've got the fat in your blood and the fat in your body. And if you look at, I mean, you can exchange glucose to fat and fat to glucose via gluconeogenesis and et cetera, et cetera. We could get in the rabbit hole there. But really, the fundamental problem is when your fat stores get over full, there's no room in your body for the energy from the food you eat to be absorbed into your muscles, absorbed into your fat. So it really just backs up in your system. Your fat is full, your fat fuel tank is full, your glycogen in your muscles and liver is full. So it just overflows into your bloodstream, and we see type 2 diabetes, elevated glucose, and everybody's got a different personal fat threshold. So South Asian people tend to, maybe it's because they carry, less muscle in their glutes and the like, and they can absorb less energy so that they have a smaller sponge that can be filled before that energy backs up into their blood and it becomes toxic, really. And once it backs up into your blood, you see the overflow into your liver and pancreas, and every vital organ gets full of fat. And that's when it becomes toxic and problematic. Meanwhile, you've got the Maori and Australian Aboriginal and a number of cultures that maybe their history comes from, well, our ancestors got in a boat and rowed for 20 weeks or something crazy to get to a new island, and the ones that survived were the ones that could build up a lot of fuel in their body. So those people can get quite obese before it overflows into their bloodstream and before they tap out their fat stores. So that's the personal fat threshold concept. And the root cause of type 2 diabetes largely is maybe there's some sort of autoimmune component to it, but it's largely once your body fat stores tap out and they can't fill anymore, and then it becomes dangerous when all that excess energy from your low satiety, nutrient poor diet overflows into your bloodstream.
Right. Yeah, because when I was growing up, we basically were under this idea that your body could create all the fat cells, that you could just keep getting more and more. That was kind of an infinite growth potential. But it turns out that's actually not true. And at some point, it goes
Mm,
from being stored in adipose tissue to being stored in the organs or just
yeah.
stuck in the bloodstream. Oh,
Yeah, you can grow little baby new fat cells to a degree, but eventually that capacity taps out.
right.
You just fill up and fill up and fill up, and there's a limit to how big your fat cells can grow and how many new fat cells you can grow. And once you fill that, your body goes, well, that's it. Like, where else do I store this energy that we keep on eating, body? Well, okay, liver, organs, pancreas, and once your liver and pancreas and heart and brain and everywhere else start getting chocked up with excess energy, then we're in trouble, and that's the root cause of metabolic disease and all the things that are killing us in our modern world. Basically, everything but getting hit by a bus is due to eating trash food that's made for profit.
Yeah. So why don't we just, why don't you believe the answer is to just eat fewer calories from trash food? How is it more complex than that?
Have you ever
It
tried?
sounds like you're making an argument for calories in, calories out. Just eat less, your personal under your personal fat threshold, and everything will be fine. I mean, that I could see
Yeah,
someone taking that message away, but I know you well
yeah,
to know that's not true.
yeah. It's definitely about energy balance.
Hmm.
But we don't just eat for energy; we eat for nutrients as well. So, I mean, our modern drugs mimic satiety. We've got Ozempic, which is going to be the
Right.
biggest, best money making drug in the world, which is going to enable people to go from, I used to eat 10 donuts a day and now I can eat six. And, what are the long term implications of that? They were getting 50 grams of protein before. Now they're going to get 30 grams of protein a day. They were getting uh, virtually no potassium, and they're going to get very little potassium. They're going to get even less calcium and all these nutrients that our bodies need to thrive, that we crave, that we eat to get. We're going to get less of them. And as soon as you take that artificial break off your appetite, what's going to happen? You're just going to go, wow, I'm just going to eat everything because I'm so malnourished. I'm just going to keep on eating and eating and eating. And that's why after 2 years of Ozempic, people who come off it, they can't stop eating and they just instantly, in the next few months, regain all that weight. So, yes, it's about energy balance, but energy balance is about getting the nutrients you need. It's not just the energy. We don't eat for only energy. We eat to get protein or amino acids. We eat to get potassium, sodium, calcium, iron. There's all these nutrients that have declined in our food system since the 40s, 50s, since we
Right.
industrialized our agriculture, since we superfueled it with fossil fuel fertilizers that just, injected energy into our system. We're getting more energy, less nutrients. So we have to keep on eating to get those nutrients. So, yes, it's about energy balance, but we're eating more because we're not getting the nutrients that we used to 50, 100 years ago from our food system because it just contains less nutrients because we've diluted the nutrients with cheap energy from sugar, refined flour, and a massive amount of vegetable oils, industrial seed oils that are just, used to be a waste product and they worked out how to put it in food. And what a great idea. And it's heart healthy vegetable oil. And we're now eating 800 calories per day per person more from fat than 100 years ago.
Wow.
800, it's ginormous amount. And it's just a waste product that's incredibly cheap. Refined vegetable oil is just it's so easily assimilated into our system that there's no dietary thermogenesis, there's no digestion of that. It's just instantly
Okay.
stored, and your body, look, with protein you might lose 35% of that energy in, converting it to muscle and converting it to ATP. But with all this really refined fat, it just goes straight into storage. Body goes, welcome aboard. We are good to go. You can just sit here and here and here and here, and it just accumulates. So meanwhile, our body is going, I need to eat more. I'm addicted to food because I'm trying to get the nutrients I need from the food I'm eating, and it's just so nutrient poor. It's got minimal protein, potassium, calcium, sodium, iron, all these sort of critical nutrients that have declined in our food
Right.
system.
Mhm. So you took this data that you were, kind of discovering and researching and looking at to help your wife, and if I remember correctly, you had shared it somewhere on the internet, and it just kind of went gangbusters. And now you have
Yeah,
this whole community. You've got Nutrient
yeah.
Optimizer and several different programs in there, in a community that really teaches people to essentially chase after nutrients and to
Mm.
understand their own personal fat threshold. Is that,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So 6 years ago, we booted off. We developed Nutrient Optimizer to try and show people how to get the nutrients they need in food. So it's an app that says, what are you eating now? How can we find other foods and meals that complement what you're eating to fill in your nutrient gaps? So that just gave us access to a massive amount of data. And then I found 500,000 days of MyFitnessPal data, and then recently brought in the NHANES data set, which is how the average American eats. So now I've got 836,000 days of macronutrient data that gives you a really nice understanding of the exact bliss points that we crave, and how to manipulate your diet to satisfy your cravings with less energy, which I think is, the holy grail of nutrition. How do you satisfy your appetite without having to overeat? I think that's it. What's the ultimate question of nutrition? How do you give your body what it needs without excess energy? You need energy. You want to run around. You want to be active. You want to exercise. You need energy, but we're just eating too much energy to get the nutrients we need.
What are some of the key things that you found in taking a look at all of that data that really kind of emerge up to the top as being the things that we are seeking from our food that we're not getting enough of?
Yeah, I mean the biggest things, we realized that we were getting beriberi, so we fortified with vitamin B1 in America, and most of the rest of the world. We said, oh, we can fix that. We just dump in a whole lot of synthetic B1 into our food system. We're getting pellagra, so we'll just dump in a lot of synthetic B3 into our food system. We're anemic, we're iron deficient. We're going to dump in a whole lot of iron filings into our cocoa puffs and Nutrigrain, and brag that it's a great source of iron and all these nutrients. And we're getting spina bifida, so we're going to dump in some folic acid, which I don't think has the same function as natural folate from vegetables. So we satisfied all these deficiencies of the small vitamins with synthetic additives. So we worked that out. But what we don't get in our food system, what has actually declined and is still lacking, is, protein has been diluted by energy from fat and carbs. Potassium has gone down. It's now a nutrient of concern. Iron is although it's fortified in a lot of places, it's still the number one nutrient of concern worldwide that people are deficient in, particularly when they're not getting enough animal products. Calcium is really low and is a nutrient of concern. So they're the major nutrients that then show up in our multivariate analysis as the nutrients that align with greater satiety. So if you're packing in more protein, calcium, potassium, iron, sodium into your diet, sodium has actually declined in our food system since the 1940s. As much as we're advised to limit sodium, it sort of makes sense if you're trying to limit your sodium, and then along come the Doritos and chips that they're laced with sodium, and then this perfect blend of fat and carbs. So if you've been advised to restrict sodium because sodium is bad, and then you've got this bag of chips in front of you, you're not going to stop eating it because you're trying to get your sodium from those chips. So yeah, we're just this nutrient sensing seeking missile in the environment that we just keep on craving nutrients and seeking out the priority nutrients that we need from our food system. And it's just a numbers game again. If we can mimic our appetite with numbers, we can solve the problem in the most efficient way.
So if we're seeking nutrients, why don't my clients crave vegetables?
Well,
I mean, after
okay.
they start eating them, I feel like then they start, but at the onset, like when people come to me, their complaint isn't like, I can't stop eating
I'm
vegetables.
addicted to broccoli, Amy. I just
Can't
can't stop binging on broccoli. Yeah, is that what they say?
exactly. I just keep craving all the potassium and the magnesium. So
Uh, and that's really interesting. And if you look at, let's take sodium. Um, we see this bliss point curve for each of the nutrients. So if you're not getting enough sodium, you'll crave salty foods till you get 2.9 grams per 2,000 calories of sodium. But once you add too much sodium to food, it tastes too salty, and your
right,
taste buds go, bah, bah, bah. This is too salty. This is too nutrient dense. So for each of the nutrients, there's sort of this bliss point and then an optimal nutrient intake that we've defined as maximum 3 times the bliss point. So once foods, and that's a good point, like you look at all the most nutrient dense foods that contain the most nutrients per calorie, people go, I'm never addicted to those foods. I'm not craving those foods. I'm like the spinach and bok choy and asparagus and these nutrient dense plant based foods. They have a strong bitter taste that signals to your body you're getting all the nutrients you need with less energy. So let's not overeat those foods because you don't need much asparagus or broccoli or whatever to get a ton of nutrients that sort of have a very strong taste. Liver has a strong taste. Mackerel has a strong taste that sort of puts a brake on your appetite that says, let's not overeat this. We don't need much of it to get all the magnesium, potassium, and sodium we need. But then you look at the foods that are designed to make you overeat them. They're formulated to contain just the right amount and even supplemented, fortified to contain just the right amount of pretty much all the nutrients that go, this has got a little bit of, sodium, B1, B3, all the nutrients, just enough to be seductive. It's like this, it seduces you to say, hey, we've got nutrients here, but you just have to eat 6,000 calories worth of us to get the nutrients your body needs. So just keep on eating and you just go, oh, the food tastes good. And like those addictive foods, they don't taste amazing. They just taste just palatable enough. But there's something about them you can't stop eating because you have to keep eating a lot of them to get the nutrients you need. So yeah, the satiety is a fascinating numbers game, and the foods we desire and think we crave often aren't the numbers help us understand what our body is actually craving and needing.
right, right. In terms of protein, when you take a look at the data, where's that optimal protein intake? I mean, I know it's going to vary individual to
Yeah,
individual, but generally speaking, bird's eye view.
yeah. As you inferred, everybody's protein intake is going to vary depending on how much muscle mass they have, how much activity they're doing. If you're lifting heavy, you'll crave more protein. But the best way to, you go, oh, I don't like protein. It's like go deadlift, like lift something really heavy, and your muscles will be going, I need protein to recover from this. Give me, the high protein foods, give me the steak. And listen to a podcast with Sean Baker on the Harvard podcast, and he's talking about eating 500 plus grams of protein a day because
I
he's a big guy and he's very active and lifts a lot. So if you're damaging your muscles, they want to repair and grow. So yeah, that's the magic to craving more protein. But in terms of percentage, if you're getting less than 12.5% protein, your body will crave more protein. So if you're eating, if you're a fruitarian or a plant-based low oil person, sitting at 7% protein, and someone puts a steak in front of you, you're gonna maybe crave that protein, that steak, or you're gonna be dreaming of, some people, I hear stories of amnesic eating of the hardcore plant-based people, and once they have a piece of salmon, their life is different, etc., etc. So if you're on a very, very low protein, you'll crave 12.5% protein, which isn't a lot.
No.
But once you eat more than 12% protein, 12.5% protein, you'll be satisfied with less energy. So in our classes, we advise people to find out where they are. If you're at 15% protein, which most of the population is, let's try 20% protein, which is just a matter of dialing back your energy from fat and carbs while prioritizing protein. If you're not losing weight consistently with that, which a lot of people do, let's go to 25, 30, 35. 40% seems to be a nice stretch target. A lot of people in our challenges get to 50 and even 60% protein if they're super
Oh,
hardcore. But once you get to 40%, there's probably other nutrients in your diet that are more important than protein. You're getting all the amino acids you need. Let's start looking at potassium and calcium and iron and making sure you're getting, let's look at your micros and fine tune those others, because dialing in your protein will get you most of the way. It'll get you a long way down the track. High protein foods tend to be quite nutritious, but you can eat a ton of protein powder, but if you're not eating the non-starchy veggies, you're probably missing out on magnesium, potassium, and a bunch of other K1 and all these other harder to find nutrients. So once you're getting your minimum amount of protein, if you want to keep going, optimizing your diet, let's look at the other nutrients that are currently not contained in your diet for best results in terms of satiety and longevity.
yeah, I do actually see that clinically, like people who tend to lean heavily into the protein powders will often they won't experience the satiety
Mm,
to a greater extent, like someone
yeah,
who is, choosing something like fish or
mm,
poultry or beef or
yeah,
pork.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, protein powders are pre-digested to a degree, so they'll
exactly.
assimilate into your body really quickly. And a lot of the time they're designed to be overeaten. You look at the ingredients, a lot of the commercial protein powders that get really promoted, they're designed to be tasty and overeaten. So yeah, protein powders can play a role if you need to supplement your protein, if you're
Mhm.
lifting a lot and you need to bump up your protein. But the whole food protein sources are going to be more nutritious and more satiating over the long term. So yeah, it's not just everybody wants the easy magic pill. Everybody wants to sell you the easy magic pill. And we looked at the cost per kilo of protein, and protein powders are really expensive compared to you know, steak or whatever, mince. If you want to get cost effective protein, get it from a whole food source.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like somewhere between that 20 and 40% range is where most people end up doing really well. Is that what you've
Yeah,
observed?
if you're on a lower carb diet, the biggest lever of satiety is the protein percentage. So
Right.
that's people will get to 20, 30% quite easily, and then they can push to 40, 50% if they're really getting hardcore and really want to lose weight quickly. But then once you've got to your ideal body weight, you need to bring back energy to bring the protein percentage back. And it's hard to live at 50 all the time. Your body will crave energy because protein's a really poor source of energy, which is a benefit and a disbenefit if you're, I know you've found in our classes, if you're lifting a lot or really active or doing a lot of running, your body will crave the energy, the carbs, the fat,
Right.
which is fine. You just need to find that balance point for you. If you're on a lower fat diet, you may not need as much protein, but then the energy density, calcium, potassium, iron, even vitamin C are the satiety levels. If you're finding foods that contain more of those, they tend to be more satiating on a lower fat diet. So there's sort of different satiety signatures for different types of diets as you dig down the rabbit hole.
Do you know why that is? Like what it is about managing those or mitigating the shift in those macros that creates.
Yeah, I think on a lower fat diet, protein is just less available, and maybe iron is less available. So you're craving the iron, and lower fat diets tend to be uh, have a lower energy density. So some people can get the energy density lever into place, whereas if you're on a lower carb diet, it's a fairly energy dense diet. So nobody's eating the bowl of broccoli soup or the head of three heads of cauliflower and the massive amount of spinach that you actually need to trigger the energy density satiety effect. So you've got Robinheimer and Simpson that talk about protein leverage and how do you trigger protein leverage? It's eating high protein foods, which is the steak and then you got Barbara
Can you
Rolls
explain
talking about.
protein leverage real quick for those who are unfamiliar?
Yeah. So it's sort of going back to what I talked about before, that we crave enough protein to get to 12.5% protein. And then as we pack more protein into our energy budget, as we get a higher protein percentage, we eat less. So Robinheimer and Simpson, two bright, amazing professors from the University of Sydney, they were entomologists and started looking at grasshoppers and realized that, whether it be, slime, mold, orangutans or humans or grasshoppers, we all eat until we get enough protein. And they found in a protein dilute environment, we eat more, and our food system's been diluted of protein since the 1977 dietary goals were introduced for Americans, and we're eating less protein. So it's only gone down marginally, like by 1.5%, but it's enough to explain the increase in energy, to explain the obesity epidemic.
Fascinating.
So that's protein leverage. And then you've got Barbara Rolls talking about low energy density diets. So it's sort of like this dichotomy of, she's saying, eat watery soups and just add water to your rice and have a glass of water with everything. And that will work. It'll give you short-term satiation. It'll make you feel full in the short term.
It's
And all these
classic
studies.
1970s diet tips.
Yeah, totally.
Cabbage soup
And
diet.
exactly. And it works for 2 hours, and then you're just really hungry. And the problem with all these satiety studies is that they measure the satiety response over 2 hours. And it's like,
Oh God.
who cares how hungry I am in 2 hours? I want to know how hungry I'm going to be in 2 days. Yeah. So, I mean, there's two angles on satiety that are dominant in the community. And you've got the cabbage soup diet versus the Sean Baker's carnivore diet. And it's like, they're the antithesis. How does this work? And really, they're both factors. The protein leverage and energy density are both factors. And then nutrient density, potassium, calcium, sodium, iron tend to be major dominant factors that we seem to be craving in our diet because they've declined in our food system.
So when people go through the program, your macros masterclass, your micros masterclass, and they start getting more of these nutrient dense foods, what
Mm.
happens?
They say, I'm only eating X amount of calories. Is that too little? I'm full. I can't eat any more and I'm losing weight. And it's go, well, if you're losing weight and you're full and you're satisfied, you're getting the nutrients you need and your body is saying enough. And I go, this is crazy. I was told that I'd get, my slowed metabolism and I should fear that because I'm eating too little calories. And I go, well, that's welcome to satiety. That's how it works. Once you give your body what it needs, your appetite switches off, and they go, "Oh, that's crazy." Yeah. Oh, look, I'm shredded. This is so cool. Um, and I suppose we also say if you're losing weight at more than 1% per week, you're trying a little bit too hard, dial that back. But if
Okay.
you're not losing more than 1% per week, you're getting enough calories and you're going to limit your risk of losing lean mass. So that's the big thing is um, your metabolic rate will slow if you lose muscle. And if you go on Ozempic and eat 5 donuts rather than 10 donuts a day, you will lose muscle. Your metabolic rate will go down. You will get cold. You will get miserable. You will get depressed and you may be skinny. You'll probably be skinny fat still because you've lost all your muscle, but you want to keep your muscle and you want to feed the muscle, burn the fat.
Right.
Old Tom Venuto saying,
Exactly.
yeah, it's great. It's just, look, that's it. Feed the muscle,
Mhm.
protein, lift stuff, burn the fat. So that's a matter of dialing back the fat and the carbohydrates.
So I was reading a little bit of the paper that you sent me. I did get a
Mm.
chance to kind of crack it open and
You went,
and
wow, there's a lot of words there.
there was one thing that really jumped out. Um, and you had talked about a 2016 paper that was discussing GLP-1 stimulation by nutrient-rich.
Mm,
And
mm.
I was like, I got to know more about this because
Yeah,
everybody's talking about GLP-1 right now, and
yeah,
nobody's talking about it from a food standpoint, and
yeah,
that foods we eat could actually also
yeah,
trigger this hormone. So take me on a ride.
yeah. Yeah, there's just no money in selling nutrient-dense food that
What?
naturally promotes GLP-1 and satiety. It's like what raises satiety hormones in your body. It's food that contain nutrients that tell your body, I've got the nutrients and energy I need. It happens when you eat nutritious foods and your body says, okay, I'm just, the more I've dug into this, the more fascinated I am by our appetite. And it's just this wonderful, mysterious, our bodies are this amazing organism that we understand so little of consciously, but our subconscious appetite is driving us to, you know, every time I eat, it's just fascinating to just observe and watch my son and watch my dog, and I just observe their fascination with food and what food does my dog crave and go absolutely nuts over, and what food does it just completely ignore. Yeah, but if your appetite is satisfied and you stimulate all the satiety hormones with nutritious food that contains protein and fiber, and it has a lower energy density and potassium and calcium and basically the things you're needing. Imagine, as I said, a nutrient sensing missile just going, okay, I'm needing calcium. I'm going to keep
Mm.
on eating dairy foods. I'm needing protein. I'm going to have to eat 6,000 calories worth of Doritos to get it, or I'm going to have a steak or lean protein that's going to satisfy that with less energy. Yeah. And there's no money in that. So there's not a lot of research crazily. It's like, why are we not looking at that? That's where the solution is. But everybody online is telling you how amazing GLP-1 drug. It's like, oh, tell me about your association with the money flow from GLP-1 drugs. Oh, right. You just sold a company to Weight Watchers for $132 million. Wow, cool. That's why you're motivated to promote them. Fantastic. What?
Follow the money trail, right?
That's an interesting coincidence, and you're pro GLP-1s and like the money flow to everybody to educate us about drugs and food from the people who are making money. Yeah, it's just really hard for the poor individual to find information that's unpolluted by commercial conflicts of interest,
It's extremely
especially
difficult.
in America.
Yes, especially yes, because I mean our universities are funded by the food industry, and I went to a private university, and so my education was not funded by Kellogg or Nestle, but most of the degrees that one gets in the United States, if they're heading in this field, their nutrition program is often, particularly if there's research going on at that
Mm,
university, is funded by the food industry,
mm,
and
mm,
and that obviously can create, maybe not an overt conflict of interest, but one would be mindful of what one is willing to say if the person that's
mm,
paying them might get
mm,
upset if they,
mm, mm,
say that, well,
mm,
maybe
mm,
we shouldn't be
mm,
having Coca-Cola or as part of a moderate diet.
mm, mm, moderate your food and everything in moderation is a little bit crazy, but anyway.
I mean, what does that even mean? It's basically like do what you want is,
Yeah.
it doesn't have
Intuitive eating in a intuitive eating in the modern environment where you've got Uber Eats. It's like I feel like Uber Eats, and I feel like Pizza Hut, and it's like, yeah. If you can control your food environment, it's different. If you've only got nutritious whole foods around you, you will naturally, like Robin Harmon Simpson David Rabenholm, when I talked to him, what's your best piece of advice? He said, shop with your brain, eat with your appetite. So once you've got your food environment controlled, you know exactly what you crave. It's like I went for a run. I'm going to crave some energy. I need to recover. I need to refuel. I'm not as active today. I'm going to go for the lean and nutrient dense foods. But in this environment where the nutrients are so poor, the nutrient density is so poor, yeah, unless you prioritize nutrient density first, you're going to be a victim, a slave to your appetite and everything in moderation. It's like, yeah, good luck. When everything's designed by Nestle and Kellogg's and Sanitarium to make you overeat them, they have used the same technology that I've been talking about since the 1980s to formularize food to make you eat more, to make more profit from the cheapest ingredients possible. It's a massive industry. They have perfected it. They know exactly what it takes to make you eat the most while making the most money and, costing the least. And the cheapest ingredients are just, flour, sugar, vegetable oils with colors, flavorings, and a few synthetic nutrients. So you'll keep on going, yeah, this is sort of nutritious. So I'm not going to crave the steak and fish and veggies because I'm getting just enough vitamins from my Cocoa Pops. So I'll just keep on chowing down. These are great.
So going back to controlling your environment, if someone wants to, make an immediate change, right? The next time they go to the grocery store, what would you say would be maybe the top 5 foods that they should consider putting into their grocery basket? Again, with the caveat that each person has different biochemical needs, different risk of different nutrient deficiencies, right? But in terms of the most nutrients per bite, which is really what we're aiming for, which foods have you seen, or with all that data, that you believe have the most nutrients per bite?
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as, meat, seafood, and non-starchy veggies, maybe with a little bit of fruit, possibly. But, fruit is not particularly nutrient dense, but it's got that low energy density factor that makes it hard to overeat. So it may give you a bit of vitamin C and potassium, but it's not particularly nutritious, but it's hard to overeat. But yeah, the meat, seafood, and non-starchy veggies is a great place to start in terms of nutrient density and satiety. But I think on the flip side of, I read Ultra Processed People by Chris Van Tucken recently. It's really fascinating. And he just says, there's a great book about quitting smoking that just says, yeah, keep smoking while you read this and learn about what smoking does to your body and see if by the end of it you want to keep smoking. And similarly, he takes the same approach to ultra processed foods and takes you through and says, this is how they make them, this is how they formulate them, this is, why the big investors in the food companies will remove any CEO that gets a conscience and says we're going to make healthy foods with our company. They go, it's not quite as profitable. We'll just remove that CEO and bring back a new one that will make more profit. And it's just really tied up. And so I suppose that rant leads to, before you put anything in your trolley, look at the ingredient list. Does it contain a combination of sugar, flour, seed oils with colors, flavors, and synthetic nutrients? If it does, then it's formulated to make you eat more of that food to maximize profit. You don't stand a chance against that. And pretty much everything you pick up in the center aisles that has a box and a barcode will follow that formula. It's just the same 3 ingredients colored and flavored in different combinations to make you overeat to maximize profit. So yeah, pick it up, read the ingredients list. Is that what your body really needs? If you're struggling to stop overeating, if you're struggling to get the body composition and energy levels that you are craving, you feel miserable because if your body's not getting the nutrients it needs, it's probably not a good solution. And unfortunately, it's the cheapest solution a lot of the time because our subsidies are set up to fund these foods. So if you've got the means, invest in foods that will help your body. And as you invest in foods that taste good because they contain the nutrients they need, because they're grown in a regenerative, happy, healthy environment that is good for you and good for the planet, then that'll make them cheaper. Consumer demand will move and food companies will move. So I just hope as we inform people that foods that contain the nutrients they need are not the ones with the packages and barcodes, then there'll be more demand for the nutritious foods. And it's not just the poorly raised products, it's the regeneratively raised products that actually contain the nutrients. And yeah, there's bad things about our meat agricultural system. There's bad things about our monocrop, cereal grain, vegetable oil agricultural system. It's just humans. We eat stuff and we need resources and we damage the planet. But if we create a demand for things that taste amazing because they contain the nutrients we need, then I think the world will be a better place.
Oh, I mean, that's kind of a mic drop moment right there. So I want to stop and let all of this information sink in. We'll reconvene next week and I'll continue the conversation with Marty and we'll go spelunking in a particularly blasphemous area of nutrition. The connection between religion, morality, and our current dietary guidelines. As always, if this episode reminded you of someone, please share it with them. And if you've not yet subscribed yourself, be sure to do so that way you can stay connected to a saltier source of information that nourishes you, where other podcasts might leave you flat. See you soon! Any and all information shared here is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not to be misconstrued as offering medical advice. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a provider-client relationship. Note, I'm not a doctor nor a nurse, and it is imperative that you utilize your brain and your medical team to make the best decisions for your own health. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked to this podcast are at the user's own risk. No information nor resources provided are intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Be a smart human and do not disregard or postpone obtaining medical advice for any medical condition you may have. Seek the assistance of your healthcare team for any such conditions and always do so before making any changes to your medical, nutrition, or health plan. If you have found some nuggets of wisdom, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share Blasphemous Nutrition with those you care about. As you navigate the labyrinth of health advice out there, remember, health is a journey, not a dietary dictatorship. Stay skeptical, stay daring, and challenge the norms that no longer serve you. If you've got burning questions or want to share your own flavor of rebellion, slide into my DMs. Your stories fuel me, and I love hearing them. Thanks again for tuning into Blasphemous Nutrition. Until next time, this is Aimee signing off, reminding you that truth is nuanced, and any dish can be made better with a little bit of sass.